And this will be a fun one because we have a director interview for this segment. Yes, this is one of those times you get to watch like a trippy film and be like, what was that guy thinking? Well, we'll find out because I got to ask him. But Delicate Arch, it is on Screambox. It's about a bunch of friends who go out into the desert during some weird thing that's happening. They call it like the inversion or something. And reality starts to bend and warp around them, and they end up being inside a horror movie. Several horror movies, actually, who whatever entity is making the horror movie can't decide which horror movie they're in. And they literally at one point break the frame of the film because they realize they are stuck in some crazy entity's idea for a movie. It is very, very trippy. It is half found footage. They play around with like cell phone filters and whatnot during their drug trip. I had a really good time for it. I can't wait for you guys to hear from the director. But real quick, Crystal, did you watch this one?
I did.
Did you enjoy it?
It was interesting.
Careful.
No. Don't worry. He brings up in the interview some of the reviews he's gotten, so don't worry about it.
No, it was definitely interesting. I didn't know. Once again, didn't know what the film was. Didn't watch the trailer, had no idea. So I was like, okay. And then it just happened.
Mm.
I like the concept. I think it was a really cool concept. For me, I did speed it up a little bit so I could make sure I got to watch all of it.
But God damn it again. By the way, Screambox shared our review of Lizzie Lazarus, and I forgot there's like a minute of us going like, yeah, we played the movie double speed, so we get
we did.
God damn it.
That's what I did for this movie.
I had to because it was a little bit long and I was trying to make sure I was grasping what was happening. So for my brain, the slowness wasn't working. I was losing interest, but with it sped up, I was fine.
Okay.
Especially the walking and the trip part and stuff. Part of me wants to go back and rewatch that part because I thought that part was really cool.
I definitely want to rewatch this one again.
I want to
Very
rewatch
accurate,
it.
Man.
I would watching it for the first time sped up, great. I think I would want to rewatch certain parts of it, not, and actually now that I know what it's about, rewatch. The concept was so interesting. You have to be paying attention to this movie or you're not going to be interested or you're going to lose what the hell is happening. It was Screambox always thinks things are more horror-esque, and for the last two movies, they're not very horror.
You know what? They're horror-esque, but they're not horror.
That's what it is.
They have horror stuff. I don't know.
They have Terrifier.
These are the ones. These are the ones that are on the mailing list. So I was like, all right, yeah, I'll check it out. Joey C, what did you think of Delicate Arch? Did you have any special brownies before this?
I did. Yeah, I did.
That probably was a bad idea.
Well, it might have counteracted the movie's vibe.
No,
for you, it was just a totally normal movie.
No, Gil, it fucked me up, man. I did the whole Gil trick. I played it at 2x. I was only supposed to play it.
I don't like this reputation. To be fair,
I posted this to Twitter, you asshole.
Just to be clear, I never said I watched it on 2x. I just said that's an option. That's all I said.
I watched like 20 minutes on 2x and I was like, I gotta rewind this and play it at regular speed because I was not following. So I did watch the whole movie on regular speed. And I don't know what the fuck I watched. I was very confused, but I was impressed. It's like a creature feature with found footage and experimental horror. I was constantly saying, what the fuck is going on here? I did feel like it was style over substance for most of the movie. But I kind of dig that, you know, with like the aspect ratio changing and the trippy segments were really fucking entertaining to watch. I was also just, I don't want to spoil it, but I was very confused about the ending. It's very vague. I feel like I've never flaunted my knowledge. I'm dumb. I'm very dumb. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Was it about basically like a multiverse or something like
that?
Yeah,
or like a gateway or like...
Yeah, I thought he was like, he went into like, not just like a multiverse, or he was in his own head and had his own story in his head and happened because because he came back and it sounded like this entire vision just happened in a blink of an eye and he literally stabbed his eyes.
See, that makes sense. That makes more sense.
Wait, more? Did he
Hey.
use straws or was that chopsticks? If it was straws,
Chopstick,
They were
right?
chopsticks.
damn it!
Yeah.
I thought we were picking up. There's like a new
Almost.
trend going on here.
Well, Gil, real quick, what did you think of the film before
Uh,
we go to the director interview?
Yeah, I liked it. I think there's it straddles a fine line because I feel like when movies get experimental, usually to me that means we don't care about narrative, like whatever. And I can't watch a movie like that. But I feel like what this movie does is for the first half, it's fairly grounded. There's not a lot of weird stuff going on. There's a little hints here and there. And so I got invested in the characters. I thought it did a good job of when you have like a low budget movie like this, you really need to get bought into the characters and their little interpersonal dramas. And I felt connected to them. And then when the weird stuff starts happening, what I appreciated is that it didn't let go of narrative entirely in the sense that the characters were reacting to the lack of narrative. Like the characters were still there saying, what the hell is going on? As opposed to like my biggest pet peeve with movies, and like Midsommar is one that did this, where by the end all the characters are drugged up or hypnotized, and at that point there's nobody making choices, and then I feel like I'm just watching a bunch of people that are in the passenger seat, and I start to disconnect, and that didn't happen with me here. And I feel like the other line this is straddling is when it starts to get experimental. The worst thing that can happen is when it feels like a filmmaker just throwing crap against the wall and seeing what sticks, and it feels like someone just describing their dream and you get bored because there's no internal logic to any of it. But this movie, I can't tell you, word for word what it means and what it was all about, but I did trust that there was a vision and I did feel like beneath the surface there's something there. Like some of the takeaways for me is that it's saying something about the medium of film, like the limitations of it. Okay, when someone's not on screen, they may as well not exist. I didn't exist until the camera was pointed at me. And okay, well, what does that say about reality? If I haven't talked to somebody in 10 years, for all intents and purposes, in my world, they don't exist. But then it also looks at the other end, which is the infinite possibilities of film. So you can look at the footage of when the horror element actually enters. You see it's zombies, or is it aliens? It could be any kind of horror movie. So I don't really know what to conclude from all that, but I feel like it's looking at both the limitations, like he's literally trapped in the frame, but then at the same time, like the infinite possibilities, even when they're going through like the Snapchat filters and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I found it interesting. I do feel like it straddled that line. It can be a challenging watch, but it definitely kept my attention, and I'm excited to see what else this filmmaker does. And I'm excited for this interview. Hopefully, he just explains it all.
I'm excited for this interview. Real quick, I'm going to bring Logan in. Logan.
Hey.
You're going to really like the end of this interview. It turns out this director worked on a movie that me and you talked about. And
All right.
he confirms a theory that I had about that movie. So pay attention to this one. All right, I'm going to take us off and I'm going to play this interview and we will be back afterwards. So if anyone has to pee on the panel, now is the time to do it. All right. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone, I'm here with the director and writer, Matt Warren, who wrote and directed Delicate Arch. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Hey, Antonio. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this with you.
Yes, I really enjoyed your movie.
Thank you.
I don't think I understand all of it, but that's fine. That's fine.
I don't think I do either.
Well,
Yeah.
good. I'm glad you admitted that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I just wanted to know a little bit about yourself. How long have you been working in films?
I'm based in Louisville now,
All right.
in Kentucky, and I grew up in Utah between Park City and Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And then there was about a 20-year chunk where I was in Los Angeles in between those two things. So I grew up loving like the VHS hits of the 80s, like all of us of our generation did. Your Ghostbusters, your Back to the Futures, your Indiana Jones, and some could argue that was like the peak of Hollywood filmmaking in terms of its potency, especially on a young viewer. So a real relationship with cinema began then. And then later, when I was in high school, I got more into sort of more esoteric films and more artsy films, and specifically horror films, and kind of discovering the great canon of horror movies. And I was living in Park City during this time, and so concurrent to that, you also had kind of like the early and mid 90s, actually it kind of lasted the entire decade, but the Sundance boom. So each year, just my kind of little resort town that I called my hometown just became like, the center of filmmaking and film culture for like a week each year. And that was always a really intoxicating environment to be around. And I was able to see a lot of stuff then, and that just kind of further cemented my fascination with an aspiration to continue being a part of that.
Cool.
And yeah, that continued through film school at the University of Utah, and then through a 20-year career in LA working on sort of smaller stuff.
Awesome. So yes, where did the idea of Delicate Arch come from?
A lot of times the best creative ideas are sort of when two separate ideas kind of grow into each other. Two ideas that are half baked or maybe even 75% baked come in, and then all of a sudden you have something that's like 150% baked. And for this one, it was really grew out of two sequences that exist in the film, the final film, pretty much as I see them, as I envisioned them. One was the sort of film within the film, where the characters make this short film with a disembodied hand.
Yeah.
And that is sort of a remake of a student film I had made. And for whatever reason, that imagery just kind of stuck with me. And then the other part of that short film was that we made that on sort of a weekend camping trip in Arches National Park, where a lot of the basic skeleton of the characters and their dynamics and some of the plot points in Delicate Arch kind of come from. And then the other thing was the one sort of centerpiece sequence where Grant, our protagonist, is interacting with the camera in hopefully this innovative way, and sort of testing the limits of the frame he occupies. That was sort of a whole sequence that like kind of came to me in a flash of inspiration while I was watching movies at Sundance one year, and at the Eccles Center. And I kind of fit those two together, and that's where Delicate Arch came from.
Nice. And I will say that was my favorite scene in the film, where he's like literally breaking the frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you only ever get to see breaking the frame in big budget 3D movies. It was a little bit more interesting here than seeing the Ghostbusters proton energy going everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a reference for that was, I don't know if you've seen the old like Donald Duck cartoon Duck Amuck, where
probably not in a very long time.
So yeah, well, when people ask me about my influences on this movie, I'm always happy to cite this one Donald Duck cartoon from, I don't know, whenever they were making Donald Duck cartoons, the 40s or whatever. I didn't know how we were really going to execute that, but we had William Leon, who's such a gifted performer, playing that role, and Matthew Rogers and our whole sort of camera team. Matthew was our DP, and they really kind of figured out how to do that practically. And that was definitely the most takes of anything.
Probably, yeah.
we did in the film. Yeah.
No, I love how you guys played with the aspect ratios throughout the whole film. And yeah, him breaking that mat was a lot of fun, because people forget, like, there's a whole movie outside of the mat. Years ago, a person sent me a cut of Jurassic Park that was open mat. And it was like you're watching the movie. I included footage of it in my review, and people were because I didn't draw attention to it. So people were so confused. They're like, wait, are there pillows underneath the frame? They're like, wait, is that a mic? I'm like, where's that light? I'm like, wait, they're like, Tony, where is this footage? And I just put it in there to see if it copy. But yeah, it's like you totally watch a movie in a whole different way when it shifts aspect ratios. I wanted to ask about where they're tripping out on mushrooms and you guys are using the filters.
Yeah.
Was that actually done like with the filters on the phone, or did you make it up in like post production with visual effects, or was that actually all done with the actual like filters that you can put on your phone?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So everything in the film was shot on set with our cast and crew, but we didn't shoot it to where the filters were active while we were shooting it. We just kind of shot the raw footage of the characters.
Okay.
And then it was in post productions where we take that raw footage and sort of experiment with, just have that footage on, I just put that footage on my phone essentially, just like it was, any other sort of home video footage, and downloaded a bunch of kind of these, there were just a bunch of them at the time when this sort of AR technology was just emerging on a prosumer level. I just downloaded a bunch of these different apps and would experiment with sort of different looks, and then a lot of the time sort of layering different looks on top of each other. Like you run it through one app and one filter, and then you run it through, take what that spits out, and then run it through a different one. And then just sort of like mix and match, and hopefully came up with something that's unique in a way that, is sort of a one of a kind thing that can't be replicated, even if you were to download one of these apps.
I thought it was a really cool way to show like a drug trip, but like have it built into the narrative of the story. Like it's found footage. So it's like, at first I was just like, wait, how are they filming them tripping? I'm like, oh, and then they draw attention to it. They're like, oh yeah, I'm playing with these filters. Like that was actually a really funny way to get around that.
Yeah.
What did you enjoy filming more? The more like traditional cinematic stuff, or the more found footage parts of the film? And how was it blending those together in post? Because I liked how it kind of went back and forth.
The vibe wasn't too different between filming all of the different things. We still basically used the same amount of crew to rig and light and shoot everything. It was just a matter of what the device was that Matthew Rogers, our DP, was holding. The things that were a little bit different, and they actually worked out great, even though I was a bit nervous about it at the time, was there's a lot of stuff that is just shot by our actors that, maybe sometimes I was watching it on a monitor far away. Sometimes I wasn't. I would just send them around the block with the video camera that they had, and, told them to film the scene themselves. And luckily all that stuff came back really good, because all those guys are really great filmmakers in addition to being actors. So that was fun. But yeah, I think the most challenging day was actually our last day, which is when we shot all those different sort of setups with the aliens and like the bikers and like,
I loved how it kept like they were like, it was like whatever this entity is, it can't make up its mind on what kind of movie they want to make, so they keep changing it. I really enjoy that.
And it's basically, those are all the same people. They just like get quick sent back to the trailer real quick, get turned into a biker or an alien or a zombie or whatever, and then get sent back to set. And we just kept doing that scene over and over. And it worked in the film, but we lost the light. Like there are sequences at the end of that when they turn into devil worshippers and all that. That's at night. In the script, that was all supposed to be kind of during the day at the same time, but we went way past the setting of the sun, and it ended up working out in
I think it worked.
The reality of the film. But
so actually you guys filmed a lot in the desert. Like how deep in the desert were you? I filmed in deserts like very briefly for a TV show, but we were never like deep in it. What was it like filming in the desert for you guys?
It was interesting because we were about 45 minutes outside of Moab proper, which is the resort town just outside of Arches National Park in southern Utah. And so that Moab proper is definitely civilization, but we would sort of drive 45 minutes outside of Moab to this really unique piece of private property called, just literally called, the land, that that is actually, if I had to compare it to anything, it would be just sort of like a little miniature Burning Man type environment, because there are a bunch of there are a bunch of kind of weird off the grid, like weird in a great way, but like weird off the grids artists and creatives who just kind of live in this, almost sort of commune out there in the desert, and have kind of just turned it into a whole like living, breathing art piece, where they do concerts and different performance art and all sorts of strange things. It's all sort of set decorated, and a lot of the stuff we worked into the film. So we kind of would just walk around this amazing, like Mad Max built environment in the desert and just kind of pick and choose things to use for our film. And it was all kind of improvisatory, and just sort of playing off this really unique place.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But yeah, like I said, the movie is kind of trippy. I feel like a lot of it's open to interpretation, but since I have you, it's space aliens, right? Space aliens are making a movie and they can't figure out what kind of movie they want to make. Is that it? Did I figure it out? Did I crack the case?
I wouldn't say that. No, that's not what I imagine, but the extent to which I imagine anything specifically is, it's a little foggy for me as well.
He kept imagining that space alien. I'm like, I bet you that's like the guy who's trying to make this movie. I don't know why he's making a movie. But yeah, I like movies like this. I know some people don't, but I really enjoy them. I like being like, I wonder what they were thinking in this moment. It's also a little relatable. I remember being younger, going on trips with friends and making like a movie like on the trip. So I really related to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the movie would never get finished because when the main guy talked about how his friends were like messing around too much and not taking his script seriously, and I was like, oh man, I relate to having a film with friends who didn't care. I'm like, that one hit me right there.
Yeah, I think that's very relatable for all of us who were in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems like a lot of people really like it from what I've seen. How's the reaction to the film been for you?
It's been largely positive, but also a little bit polarizing.
Yeah.
I think we have kind of 2/3 very enthusiastic and effusive, and 1/3 really, really doesn't like it. So I always knew that it would be kind of polarizing.
Yeah.
And
This is definitely one of those where I'm like, I'm thinking of my friend group, and I'm like, they would love it. They would love it. They would be mad. They would love it. They would love it. But I love movies like that have those two very different reactions from people. It's effective. That means your movie's effective.
oh yeah, on Letterboxd we have like 5-star reviews, 4.5-star reviews, and we have like 0.5-star, 1-star, 0-star reviews too. So people are split on it, but generally more positive than negative, and I think that's frankly appropriate to the kind of film that is. I think it would not be doing what we wanted it to do if there was just sort of a middling 3-star consensus around it. Yeah. So I consider even the 1-star reviews a success, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to watch it again. I have to like watch a bunch of movies for work, but I actually like really want to like sit down and watch it again and see if I pick up on anything else. Which is the best thing about these types of films. Like you watch it multiple times. Like I want to like try and figure out. So they mentioned like that guy who was a killer she grew up with, and he shows up at the very end. I want to see if I missed any other references to him throughout the film. Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was really, really good. I hope everyone checks it out on Screenbox. Brought to us by the good people at Cineverse and Bloody Disgusting. I love that Bloody Disgusting releases films now, because as a teenager I was on their web forums like all the time.
Yeah.
But yes, I pulled up your IMDb, and there's one movie I have to ask you what it was like to work on, because I covered it a few months back. How was The Crow Wicket Prayer?
Yeah, so this was kind of the first real Hollywood film set I ever worked on. I was this was while I was in film school at the University of Utah in Salt Lake. And me and my best friend JJ, who is now a filmmaker up in Seattle, we went and joined the camera department as interns, and it was like we had nothing to sort of compare it to because it was the first time we had ever been on a set like that. But
Yeah.
according to everyone who we worked with and we talked to, who were like these, salty dog camera guys from LA, they all said it was like the most troubled, like dysfunctional production they had ever been on. And it was sort of chaotic, to be honest. It was like, God, is every film like this? But yeah, I haven't been on many since that have been that sort of stressful and a mess behind the scenes. But that one definitely seemed to be. So it was a hell of a place to start with with filmmaking.
I just want to know, were you on set the day Dennis Hopper was doing his jive talking pimp pre stuff? And what was that like to see? I hadn't watched the movie in a very long time. We did a review where we did like all the Crow sequels and the remake. And I was like, man, this one's really bad. And then Dennis Hopper showed up and I'm like, no, hey, he saved the movie. He should have been in the whole movie. I would have loved to have seen that in person. What was that like?
I mean, it was cool, it's cool anytime you get to share a space with a legendary guy like that. And he came in, he had an assistant who was like this older Native American guy. And they were always kind of talking together and hanging out. And I think he basically threw out the script and didn't do anything that his character was scripted to say. Yeah.
That is what I thought when I was watching the movie. I'm like, there's no way someone wrote this. It comes way too late in the movie to be that ridiculous. Like, that had to be his idea.
Yeah, so I think he just threw it out and did whatever he was going to do and was pretty quickly in and out.
Yeah.
The other, I think it may not have been that day, but it was that same location. Macy Gray was also in the movie for a second. And I don't know if she was going through, I think you can read up that she was like having some substance abuse problems at that time, but she could not she had like one line and she could not get through it. And it just took forever. And I think they had to eventually just Frankenstein together a couple different takes. But
that's funny because
that was really strange too.
Your movie has a whole thing where they filmed one line over and over again. It's in like the one character's backstory. So that's pretty funny. I've had to deal with that on this show. Our co-host Crystal, she acted in the short we did, and she just could not get the line right. She could not get it right. We filmed it like 15 times. So very relatable.
And the other thing I'll share that was a little bit dark was Eddie Furlong and I'm blanking on her name. And Tara Reid, I think were both at the height of their sort of parting chapters of their lives. And then I remember one day the producer, you can look up who this is, but he was the guy who had made all the Crow films, and including the first one. He was just sort of talking on a cell phone. He was really upset about something, and something trivial like losing a location or something. I don't remember exactly what, but he said something to the effect of, I've done 4 of these Crow movies and this is the worst thing to happen on any of them.
Oh no.
And I was like, well, I can think of one other thing I would put ahead of it, but
that is fun.
So that was a little dark, but it was pretty funny.
But yes, thank you for letting us know about that Crow Wicker Prayer. I'm so happy that I now know Dennis Hopper just did that on his own, and it makes me so happy. It just makes the movie better now. But yes, sorry.
Oh, I was just say he seemed totally cool and professional, other than just wanting to do his own lines. But
look, he said he wanted to thank the devil for repping the homeboys, and I'm like, fucking brilliant. But yes, where can we follow you, Matt? Where can we keep up to date on your future projects and whatnot?
Yeah, you can, if you want to follow the film. We've pretty much been, using Instagram as our primary platform. You can find the film at Delicate Arch Pick on Instagram. And if you want to follow me personally, I'm at MPM Warren. So Matt Patrick Murphy Warren, MPM Warren.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll talk to you later. I fucking knew it. I knew Dennis Hopper had to make up those lines on the set. There's no way they were written for him. That was the most amazing reveal ever. That's why I wanted you specifically to watch that, Logan.